Hello, welcome to Art Appreciation. This is the second part two of Chapter 14. It deals with timeless links, patronage, and power. The flowering of the Renaissance was marked not only by the revival of classical influences and the genius of individuals, but also by patronage of the arts by important families like the Medici. Okay, so this is a big change for almost all of the history of humans. The patrons, the people who have paid for the art, have been royalty and the church. And so the type of art that was made was very strongly influenced by these two groups. Now we have other patrons coming to play. In their bid for prestige, merchant princes began to replace patrons like rulers or religious institutions as artist clients. One timeless example of the bonds between patronage, power, and artistic genius is Michelangelo's famed Medici Chapel. Here, heroic statues of family members portray them almost as gods, eternally young, handsome, and virile. Patronage and images of power have been common in many civilizations. The colossal head of Constantine the Great impresses not only through its mammoth size, but through its unblinking stare and static symmetry. With this 40-foot statue, this emperor and patron declared both his power to the world. In Nigerian plaque, a king is seated on a horse and surrounded by attendants. Though this sculptural portrait is far smaller than the colossal Constantine, its original power would have been amplified by repetition. Thousands of such plaques decorated the court of the Kingdom of Benin. Some royal patrons have gone further to express their power. When Louis XIV built Versailles, his huge complex of palaces, gardens, and fountains, the entire site became a visible sign of his statues as the Sun King. His famed Hall of Mirrors reflects sunlight from a long line of windows which face a line of mirrors, serving as a metaphor for his glory. So, all of this built to intimidate people and impress people, and for the royalty to try its hand at holding on to power at a time when ideas such as democracy started to roll across the world landscape. By the 20th century, wealthy financiers and governments had surpassed monarchs and the church as the most powerful patrons of the arts. In the 1930s, Mexican muralist Diego Rivera painted a fresco for the Detroit Institute of Arts, sponsored by the auto industry's Ford family. In it, Rivera chose not to immortalize Henry Ford, but instead to focus on the contributions of his workers. Of course, this all has to do with the fact that Rivera is a very strong ally of socialism and communism. At the height of the Great Depression, the U.S. government hired artists like the photographer Dorothea Lange. In her Migrant Mother, Lange created a timeless and powerful portrait, one that has become an iconic symbol of the survival of the American spirit. Well, yes, that is true, but I have to point out that Dorothea Lange literally saved lives. She was hired by the government to go out and take photographs and catalog the suffering of people during the Great Depression. And while it was easier to see people suffering in larger cities, the people that were stuck in very rural areas and even trying to migrate to find work, those people were much more difficult to identify. So, literally, because of this one photograph, truckloads of food were sent to these migratory camps where people were close to starvation. So literally, her artwork saved lives. Patronage can create problems for artists because patrons have the power to change or even destroy a work of art. When Maya Lin first received her commission for the Vietnam Memorial, she had no idea she would be forced to accept a realistic statue of veterans placed nearby. So this is at a time when America had a hard time dealing with the Vietnam War. How it started, how it ended. And it takes decades for us to be removed from something like this to truly see what happened. But just to point out a few things that are difficult. The French were in Vietnam for decades before us, trying to quell the rise of communism. And they did very poorly and had to eventually retreat, defeated. As they were retreating, we were coming in. It's important to note that history does repeat itself. And you have to look at the hundreds of years of people trying to conquer Vietnam and retreating defeated to really understand what would happen when we went in. And so in that way, it was kind of a failed mission from the get-go. And, America didn't want to get involved in this foreign war. So what helped to get Americans, at least in some regard, behind the war, to make it a little more popular, was a false story that was ran that in the Tonkin Bay, there in Vietnam, an American Navy ship was attacked by the communist forces and Americans were killed. This story ran newspapers and television. It never happened. It was a lie. But it was done by the CIA to get us more involved in behind the war. So Americans were being tricked into believing that this war was something they needed to get involved with. And so it was difficult for America to deal with this. The memorial is made of black basalt stone, and it's highly polished, so that when you look at the memorial and look at the names that are engraved there, you also see a reflection of your own face there. You can put a piece of paper across any name there and take that name with you. So there is some 58,000 people that were Americans that were killed in Vietnam, and you can take the name of a relative or friend home with you. The slope of the stone that reaches an apex and then goes away is the escalation and then de-escalation of the war in Vietnam before we had to abandon and retreat. In one notorious dispute, Richard Serra's tilted arc created so much controversy that it was eventually sawn apart and removed by its sponsor, the federal government. The government then sold it as scrap metal. Good Lord, how horrible. I mean, Richard Serra, one of the most powerful, iconic sculptors in the world, he works with Core 10 steel, and a lot of his works create a kind of claustrophobic feeling. And as you get close to a solid piece of metal this big, and it is curving and tilting, it can invoke that. It is important to note that when you look at patronage and who should be putting up the artwork and what it should be, I think it's very important to look at experts in the field. So the committee that would choose what sculptor to get to make something for public commission, um, that should be art critics, art historians, people like that, experts in their field, uh, to pick what artwork goes up. If not, and we just wanted the public in general to choose what artwork went up, my fear would be that we would end up with a chrome WW wrestler holding up a can of Budweiser or something like that. Not really any artwork we can be proud of. Now, keep in mind, I know it is taxpayer and government money being spent on this artwork, but if there were, let's say there was a space shuttle that we launched by NASA, and there was a chance that it would come and crash into um, our college next week and kill a lot of students. Taxpayer money could control um, how to avert this, but we would be best to spend that money on experts, rocket scientists, astronomers, people like that, scientists that could avert the tragedy. We certainly wouldn't want to ask anyone's opinion walking down the street about how to avoid this catastrophe. Even though it is government money, we're going to talk to experts. Thank you very much. Please take the quiz associated with this lecture.